Senator Michael McDowell. 5 minutes.
I support this motion, and I acknowledge that it's put in very neutral and understated terms. What's happening in Yemen is wholly unacceptable, and the fact that it is being the war there is being prosecuted largely by the Saudi Arabians and the United Arab Emirates, using arms supplied by the British and American governments to militarise those states is itself a matter of huge horror to me. The second thing I want to say is this, that the United States Senate recently expressed its views about the royal family in Saudi Arabia, and I think that that's a good shot across their bows, and therefore I commend Senator Higgins for bringing in this motion. If I had been drafting it, it would have been in slightly more colourful terms. Members of this House who are interested in Middle Eastern affairs, there are 3 very good books. One of them is called the Ottoman Twilight. The other 2 books are written by a man called James Barr, one of which deals with what happened among the northern Arab lands between Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, Jordan and the like, and Iraq. And the other of which the same man, James Barr, published recently is called Lords of the Desert, and it describes the Anglo-American involvement in the Arabian Peninsula since then. And to put it mildly, it doesn't make pretty reading. It's a long description of exploitation, selfishness, intrigue, and viciousness. And I think that, okay, the Americans and the United Kingdom are our allies. But when President Trump says that he's more concerned about 120 billion in arms sales than he is about the fate of Jamal Khashoggi, and that one thing, to use a phrase, trumps the other completely in his eyes, well, that says more about President Trump and America than anything else. And it's great that the United States Senate has rebuffed him on both accounts, that they are hauling him back under the War Powers Act from involvement in this vicious war, and secondly, that they are sticking it to President Trump in relation to his moral absolution, if that man could confer it on anybody, in respect of the Khashoggi killing. And all I would say is this, that on reading Barr's book, Lords of the Desert, the situation, as has been described here, is far more complicated than any of us can guess. It isn't a conflict between the Saudis and the Iranians. This is a struggle that has gone on for centuries now. And the different factions and tribes in Yemen, north and south, and the former British colony of Aden, the disputes between them are not of Iran's making, and shouldn't be considered as such. And I'd just like to say this in the end. Ireland is, by its constitution, committed to the peaceful settlement of international disputes. And that's a very important point. Not every country has that written into its constitution, but we do. And we should, I think, be slightly more vocal about the values for which we stand, especially arising out of the Khashoggi incident and what was going on in Yemen until recently, where cluster bombs were being used on civilians. Cluster bombs manufactured and outlawed now in the United Kingdom and America were still being used on civilians in planes manufactured by those countries and by pilots trained by those countries on civilians in the Yemen. That's a terrible thing. It really is a terrible thing that's going on. And I don't think we should be behind the door. We're not perfect, we're not paragons ourselves, but the geopolitical interests of the United States, as now expressed and promulgated by Donald Trump, are amoral, indefensible and wrong, and support for the Saudi UAE coalition in waging a war in Yemen is wrong, and Ireland as a state should call it out for what it is, the slaughter of so many civilians and the use of the war crime of mass starvation on the remainder of the civilians is completely indefensible. So I welcome and support the motion put down by Senator Higgins and our colleagues.
Thank you, Senator McTool.